this night. Okay, well, got about another minute, so we'll give people a minute just to kind of jump in, but we're getting ready for uh, March Photo Tips Monthly. It's already March, so and I would let James say if he had. Do you have any announcements that you kind of want to have?
Let's see. So, yes, I do. What do I want to talk about? Just real briefly, we just finished our Hennemule poll to see which papers that people wanted to have added to our fine art papers collection, and pretty much overwhelmingly, Photo Rag Barita was the one, and it's something we get people request a lot. So we decided, okay, let's go ahead and add it. We have the profiles and all that that we need for it, and so we went ahead and added that as an option. It's listed as a pre-order because we're still waiting for our supplies to come in, which should be any day now. And as soon as those rolls come in, we'll start production on fulfilling those orders. I think it's going to be popular. If you're not familiar with the Hennemule Photo Rag, it's basically the same thing with the Barita type of coating on the surface. So it has the appearance of more traditional darkroom print, I guess you could say. But it's thicker, and it's also all cotton as far as the base for the paper. And it's going to have a bit of a glossy finish to it. Again, like more traditional photo prints. It's a lot of professional photographers over the years have asked us to carry it, and so we're excited about offering it. And then we just today we started offering a 10% additional credits whenever you purchase fine art or finer works credits. So if you buy $100 in account credits, you get an additional $10 in credits. So very cool. And then those credits dollar for dollar go to your account. So if you have an account credit balance of you spend $100, you actually have an account credits balance of $110, and those go to the you can apply those to the purchase of your orders.
To the next purchase, right? Because it automatically goes to your next.
Yeah. You can't not until the order is complete will it go to it's automatically applied to your account. And then so when you order again, those account credits will go to that purchase. And if you have if you haven't used all the credits in that account purchase, you'll have the remaining balance after the amount is deducted. And if you don't have enough account credits, then whatever the remainder is, you can pay via credit card or PayPal. And we're also trying to add either Klarna or Afterpay. We're having trouble getting them to respond, which is weird because about a year ago, we were getting emails every day from them to say, hey, use us as a payment service. And I know sometimes people want to be able to pay for their orders in installments.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, we're just not having any luck getting them to.
Now we are able to take PayPal credit through your PayPal
which is essentially the same. PayPal has a program very much like that. So, but I know some people have an aversion to PayPal.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to use PayPal, that would be an option once we can get them to respond. The other thing I want to mention is.
Before you move on from Barita and paper, one quick question that we've gotten from a lot of people with the new one is how soon after we get the paper in will we have an ICC profile ready to go for that paper? Or is there a close ICC profile that they can
So
use?
we still have some IPF 4000s
Mhm.
and a few left over. And I need to get with our printer technician to find out if we're going to be printing them on the 4000 or the 4100, which is a slightly newer version of the current version, Canon's current version printer, that is. And the profiles, since they're different printer models, they have different ICC profiles. And once I know which one she's going to use to print the Barita paper, then I can post that profile. I was kind of reluctant to do so because she told me she was going to use I said, well, which printers are you going to use? And she said, oh, those over there. And so I went over there and said, well, there's, across the span, there was a couple 4000s and a couple 4100s. And I said, okay, well, which one?
Yeah.
And she said, well, she wasn't sure yet. So once I know that, and then I think in the other printer room we have, I'm not sure if we're going to be printing on using those as well. And so I don't think one is a 40, or both of those. I'll have to check.
Yeah.
So I'm not. Basically, I don't know.
Okay. So
yeah, but what we will know that as soon as the paper comes in, because we have profiles for both. We'll decide which one is going to be, and we'll run some test prints also to see if there's any difference, because hypothetically we could possibly use both printers if the output is exactly the same, which we do have some papers where we can do that with. Most cases there is a slight improvement, which is going to be very hard to distinguish with the 4100. And it's only on certain papers that you're going to be able to distinguish it. So, and we don't know that until we test it. So
now with that new media too, it has like a denser black to it, right? It's black that's richer on it. That's why
it's
like
because the way it works is when the profiles are telling the Canon printers to use the photo black over the matte black. And the photo black is on a glossy or luster or satin surface. And the photo black is always going to have a higher Dmax. Now, Dmax is a term in printing that you don't often hear, but it refers to the depth of the blacks, how deep the blacks look. And believe it or not, there is a depth scale that I won't get into that specifically, but you can tell that certain blacks look better than on others. And typically on a matte print, you're not going to get anywhere as that depth of black, because part of it's an optical illusion effect from that glossiness and the contrast. So that's why glossy prints always look a little bit more contrasty than matte prints.
Like if you have people who like to photograph and they like black and white prints, it's a really beautiful paper. I'll say that. So any of you photographers that are watching this, go try it. At least get a sample of your stuff done on it, because God, it's beautiful. I used to like shooting live bands, and I used to shoot that in black and white because I did that for my student newspaper and stuff. But I liked that really dense black in there, and I like that contrast to it. It looks elegant, is what I like about it. Because you take something grungy and you make something elegant.
It's definitely, I would call it a photo paper. Although looking at some of the pre-orders, a lot of the people ordering it are artists looking to put their reproductions on it, and they look great. They will look great. There's no reason why you can't. So, and matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, Hanimeal, even though they call it photo rag, they put it in their fine art collection versus their photo collection. I don't know how they determined that. But,
I'm anxious to see the color stuff that people have on there, because for me, I always think of that with black and white, and I like to print in black and white from photographs. Do you still do any black and white, Jen?
Not much.
Not much, you know.
I definitely appreciate it,
Uh-huh.
especially when it's done well and with a lot of thought and experience. But I don't do much myself.
I like that paper that we're getting because I still like being in dark rooms. And I feel that Hammermill paper really gives you that dark room feel to it. So it's going to be a good one to say. There was one more thing you wanted to move on to.
Yeah, just real quick. I'm going to change this.
Oh, just so it matches up.
James
No.
Jim.
and Jim. Although I have gone by Jim, and I
My
know
name is
Jay
James.
and
Jay.
Jim is really James
Yeah.
as well. So anyway,
I can't throw a rock out the window without hitting a
yeah,
James.
yeah.
And we have an employee named James here too. So
Oh.
it's just, yeah. Is it? Well, what's his name? It's
Oh,
James.
yeah,
There we go.
yeah.
We have to call him a different name.
Yeah.
So.
All right. And then, oh yeah. So one other thing, and this is really important to our Etsy sellers, something to be aware of that's coming up, or whether or not you're selling Etsy or selling on your own website, and you have us fulfill a lot of small print orders like an 8x10 or stuff that typically you might select the first class shipping option. So I just got it from the source, the USPS, that they are going to be discontinuing first class package services. So the first question that came to me when I talked to someone about that mentioned is, so, well, is that going to affect USPS rates? They say no. Okay, and let me explain. Okay, so what's going to be happening? Okay. Is the USPS is going to do away with something called retail ground. I think it's called a retail something. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's a service that if you take a package or an object to the post office or a package and they stamp it and meter it for you, it's retail something. It's not going to be applicable if you use Finer Works, obviously. But parcel post mm-hmm. and first class parcel or first class packages and that retail one are going to be consolidated. And the USPS is going to create a new service to try to compete with FedEx Ground and UPS Ground, but they're going to call it USPS Ground Advantage. Okay. Mm. And it's going to have a 2 to 5 day transit time according to the USPS. We all know how inaccurate the USPS's transit times are. But anyway, so they say it's going to have typically a 2 to 5 day transit time. So after the order is placed and we produce it, which takes a few days or what have you, then it has to take another 2 to 5 days. Now, this is going to be called USPS Ground Advantage, and it's going to take those services and combine it into one. Mm-hmm. So, the way I understand it, they say it's not supposed to have, I don't know about parcel post, mm-hmm. other than the fact that they have not raised parcel post rates in a long time. Mm-hmm. They've been raising rates of priority mail. They've been raising rate, every time you turn around, they raise the rates, mm-hmm. priority mail, and raising the rates of first class. Mm-hmm. But and I'm sorry to go so long, but mm-hmm. I thought this might be important. But they're going to combine them. I suspect they're going to raise the rates of what would normally be parcel post, and everything that would have otherwise qualified for first class packages will remain in that kind of that same rate category. So hopefully we don't see any changes. Now, this is supposed to go into effect at the beginning of the, at the middle of the year in July, early part of July, that this new structure. So no longer will first class mail be offered for packages that are light enough, less than a pound. They'll go to this UPS ground option if they go via USPS and they're not going priority or next day. Now, the other thing I want people to be aware of. If you are shipping your photo prints or your fine art prints yourselves, you may notice when you take your packages, your shipping tubes or what have you to the post office, a sharp increase in first class and priority. And that's because a lot of people love to order these 3x3 by 24-inch shipping tubes from Uline. And they're great for shipping prints. Ideal, they provide good protection. The only bad thing is prints don't have a chance to flatten out and breathe, but they do protect the prints quite well. Well, now what normally might have been a $6 shipping charge is now $9 and $10 if you're using those 3x3 by 24-inch tube. However, if you get a 3x3 by 20-inch tube or something that's going to be less, 22 inches or less, then you don't get that $4 surcharge.
Yeah.
So be conscientious of the dimensions, because that $4 is a lot of money for that you could be losing. So keep that in mind, everyone. And that's really kind of all I have to say about that for right now.
It's an economy that's going to encourage people to kind of increase their prices, and they really should. If they haven't done it yet, you need to do it now.
Make sure because inflation is not. We unfortunately had to make some changes to our shipping structure recently as far as shipping rates are concerned, because it just was not. It wasn't possible for us to be able to.
We couldn't donate to shipping anymore.
Yeah, we couldn't fulfill these small orders the way we had been doing if otherwise. But we try to make it fair and not so that it's going to take too much off the top. But definitely it's time for everyone to raise their prices if they're selling on
and you'll update our
Etsy.
Shipping page.
It's already been
okay, great.
If you're selling on third-party marketplaces and have not updated your pricing in a while, don't worry about it. You losing sales. If you don't, you're going to lose money. Period. Basically, unless you have a good margin. So make sure you do that. Anyway,
and economy-wise, speaking of that, that's why I wanted to kind of look at photographers who are getting into photography, because it is an expensive profession. If you're just going to do it as a hobby, it still requires quite a bit of investment still. Not as much now that you don't have to develop film, because back then I remember used to come into 1 Hour Pro Photo with all of these rolls that we would get printed, and then we had to go ahead and get the prints done. I wanted to look at people who they're just starting out. They actually had that money to go ahead and invest in a camera, maybe invest in Photoshop. And then there's another group of people that want to come in, and I want to say they don't have the funds yet, or they're very limited, so they don't want to experiment. They want to know, this is the camera. And I know we always talk about it depends on what you want to shoot, but you have people who don't know exactly where they want to go, because you have
they want to become professionals, but they don't
know which. Well, there's a lot of room. There's portrait photography you could do, photojournalism. There is event photography.
Photography touches every area of our lives.
Commercial photography. So all of these different.
There's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities.
I'm going to move this because the table keeps shaking and.
Okay. Yeah.
And. Okay.
So
you want to sit back too?
Yeah, I want to sit back
too. So we want to look at people who want to get into photography. They don't know, they haven't built a portfolio yet. They don't even know what to go shoot to show other people.
But they want to become professionals.
Yeah,
and that's the thing is they have all this. They have a very vague vision of what they want to do. But that vision is really, I want to be a professional photographer. And I'm sure you get a lot of people asking me, what does that mean? And so where do they start? How do they come up with
there's a lot of places where someone starts. I mean, they may come from just this idea. It may be a friend who's doing something, and maybe something that they've seen online. But they may come from a place of having nothing, no camera, nothing, just an idea. Or they may come from a place of being able to borrow a camera from a friend or a parent or a sibling. Or they may actually have a camera. Maybe they received it as a birthday present, as a Christmas present. Most people usually do start off with something, but it could be just their cell phone. That they've got this idea. And can you start a photography business with a cell phone? Yes, you can. It's just a tool, and there's lots of tools in the photography toolbox. A cell phone could possibly be the right one. It isn't in a lot of situations, and as far as the stereotype, the picture you have in your mind, it's not the right tool for most things, but it is the right tool for some things. And so it's just like the tools at a tool store. There's a ton of different tools in there, a ton of different things. What matters is, what's my end result? What am I trying to create? What am I trying to fix if you're at a tool store? But you're getting the tools that are right for what you're trying to accomplish. So at that point, when you're thinking, I want to be a professional photographer, or I'm considering being a professional photographer, we have to define what kind. And at first, you may not have any idea of what that is. You just have this general idea of, this sounds kind of cool. And you may have something specific. And if you've got something specific, then start leaning towards other professionals who are doing that kind of thing. But if you don't know, play. There's so many online resources. So go into YouTube, go into Google, entering different types of photography. There's camera clubs in every town that has at least 3,000 people in it. There's a camera club. And we're in San Antonio.
There's like 33 or something.
Yeah, in San Antonio, as far as I know, there's 33. And now they're different amounts of participation in them. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them they're excited and have lots of events, and then all of a sudden just seems to fade away, and then it comes back all of a sudden. And so you don't necessarily always have a consistency that you may be looking for, or that may be exactly what you want, something that is totally inconsistent. So every single thing that's available, both physical tools, cameras, lenses, filters, different things that you can add on, tripods, and of course all the behind the scenes things, the computer and the different pieces that you can use, the Wacom board, and the different ways of backing up your work, the software. There's a ton of stuff. Ton of stuff. Just like this.
It seems overwhelming
it is
to so many people.
Yes.
I think there's like also times in your life where it's good when photography, when you're young and when you're retired. Those I remember when you're
those tend to be the kind of the times that pull people into the profession or as a hobby.
There are definitely those, because I see lots of 19, 20 somethings, the 30s. I see retirees. I come in and take my business classes. I've people who are in transition of their work for one reason or another. Maybe they've changed. They got there was a series of layoffs at work, or maybe
seems to attract a lot of former teachers.
There's a lot of teachers, a lot of nurses. It's interesting who's in that transition. But sometimes right now, we're hopefully past COVID. We are mentally past COVID. And so there was this 2-year period of time where people went home and worked from home. And now those businesses, a lot of them are wanting to come back. And a lot of them are saying, I don't really want to come back. I'm not interested in that. And so what they are at that point is interested in some type of change. And that could be finding another job that allows them to work from home, but it could be finding something like photography to work that creative outlet that they feel. And if you have a passion, even if you put it off temporarily, it comes back. So you may as well just move in that direction of the things that you're feeling that keep on returning to you.
Well, let me ask this of both of you, and I'll even jump into when did James? You used to do photography as well, or when did you start?
For me, I never did photography professionally. It was more just a hobby. Okay, and believe it or not, I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed taking pictures when I was a kid. But it was really around the time that I started Finer Works that I picked up a digital camera, and I really kind of fell in love with it. And I was exposed to it because I was doing it on the side. I was doing web development for clients, and as kind of a side gig. And one of the companies that I built a website for was a portrait studio here in San Antonio. Very, at the time, a large portrait studio. Did a lot of the schools and stuff. And the office manager we were talking one day, and she showed me the cameras that they were using. It was a Kodak digital camera. I don't remember the model. And said, "Oh yeah, we're using these." And she says it's digital. And I knew what digital cameras were per se, but I had no idea what their capabilities were at the time. Especially this was the first digital DSLR camera that I actually got a chance to hold and feel, and I was like, oh, I want one of these so bad, and it was like thousands of dollars. And, but a few years later, I ended up buying my first Canon. What was it? 20D was it? I think it was, and that was around the time that I met you. Shortly before I met you, because I picked up this camera and started getting into it, and then a friend introduced me. So this was early 2000s, and so I kind of picked it up as a little bit of a hobby for a while. Ended up setting aside as Finer Works took away took more and more of my attention, unfortunately. But it's still something I enjoy. I pick up if we go somewhere on a family vacation or what have you, I'm sure to pull out my digital SLR.
You're the designated photographer for the family.
Yeah, and I have
Every family has one.
I have like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 DSLR cameras. I can't even give you the models of all of them anymore. But matter of fact, you mentored my sister-in-law who to build a photography business. So I remember we bought a bunch of photography equipment for her under the Finer Works Media brand, and so I still have some of those cameras. And for me, it was kind of an excuse to buy a bunch of cool tools.
Of course,
yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, so that's
and I know Jim, and I met you when you used to photograph like schools and stuff. That's when I first met you, and that was at the photo lab I was working at, and we would.
That was in the 90s.
That was in the 90s because it was still that was 35 millimeter film, so it was processing the film and doing the film. And I used to do E6 and 120 processing, all of this stuff over there. Yes. But so I saw you from there. But even before that, I mean, you kind of, I want to say, went hardcore because you went for school. This was what you were going to do. How long? I mean, when did you come up with that this was it? That's all you were going to do is photography.
Oh man, my first interest came when I was 6. So that would be in the 70s. That interest.
My first interest, I was probably close to that same age.
Is that right?
Yeah. See, my grandfather was a professional photographer.
Oh, so you had it in the family.
Yeah, and he gave me a camera. I don't remember what it was, but I remember having to look down to look forward, and
probably a twin lens reflex camera.
Yeah,
120.
Yeah. And so it only shot black and white, and all the pictures were square.
Mm-hmm.
So that's based on the film.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I don't know anything about film.
Yeah. So that would be the film that you purchased.
Yeah. So
that would be black and white film.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was probably medium format. It didn't necessarily have to be. There was also some other types. I guess you probably don't want to get into the details of that, but yeah, that was probably medium format, 120 or 220. And probably a twin lens reflex. If you did it professionally, it'd be a TLR. instead of the SLR or the
Single.
SLR, which we would have today.
Yeah, I remember getting that camera, and I was a kid living in Philly at the time, and he lived down here, and he came up and gave me this camera, and I was like, oh, cool. And,
Yeah.
and I was going through the alleys and city and taking pictures of sidewalks and just stuff that obviously just why would you take a picture of that? But
Do you still have some of those images?
my
The
mom
negatives?
probably does. Who knows? But it was just it was. I mean, it was just
Scan those so you have
Photo
Yeah.
restoration.
digital
taking a
shots.
picture of the a crack in the sidewalk.
Yeah,
It's just
me too.
stuff. But to me, it was just so cool to take these pictures and then to be able to see the pictures afterwards. That's kind of that planted that seed, I would say, because I think that's what happens now today. A lot of people that are wanting to become photographers, it's a little bit different because they're using a digital camera in most cases. And so to be able to see that, what you call instant gratification to taking that picture, so it creates that shutterbug in them, but it's a more immediate response. And so that drives them into wanting to become a photographer because there's a sense of control of their creativity at that point. Because when you're initially taking pictures via film, you don't feel like you have any control at first. But if you don't have any training or what have you, you don't know. You just hope, hey, I hope I got a good picture.
Yeah.
But with even if you don't have any training today, you see what you took. So you say, well, I just take the picture a little bit different, shift the camera. So you're more likely to feel that you have control. So I think that drives more people to want to become photographers because they say, oh, it's a creative outlet. And I know photography is a profession that people can make money on, and you don't have to attend, 4 years of college.
You don't?
No, believe it or
I
not.
totally
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah. So
you went
again,
that route, right?
I went that route.
You went that route.
but going back to the basic question is, where do they go from there?
Well, like I said, you had some interesting jobs too, because like I said, before you started doing even the school of photography, you did kind of what I did. I did I did amusement park, but I did everything. I did glamour shots, Sears Portrait Studios, amusement park photography, and learned all of these different processes. But I like that as a student because I was 15 getting to work with these cameras that I didn't have to invest in.
Yeah.
So the employer invested in them and taught us and trained us how to use them. Not well, because it was like a basic setting, like, you're going to have.
Here's what you need to know, go do it.
Yeah, the lights stay here, the subject stays here. You make them turn here, here, and here, and that's it. You're going to shoot these, and this is going to be your portrait package, and get it out. And then we're shooting for parks. They gave you how to frame your photos. So a lot of them gave you that, I want to say, cookie cutter frame mode that you need to do for each subject as you come in. You didn't have that flexibility to be artistic really with portrait, like I said, school photos. When you go do, the kids sit here, there's a line for them to put their toes and, how to have their hands. So there's not that art, but you need that. I think it's like riding the bike with the training wheels on.
It's almost like a rite of passage, but it's not necessary.
Not necessary, but if you don't have that money to invest in, I think sometimes those jobs and this is where I wanted to get into with people who are starting in photography, because a lot of people start to get good. They start to get really good, and they're still doing stuff very cheap or for free because they're like, I don't have that confidence yet to do this as a portfolio. And some of like when I went to go look at entry-level photography jobs, right, step off of Indeed.
There's not a whole lot of options.
There's not a lot of options. The pay scale, I want to say this. There was one that was like, we want you with 5 years photo editing experience. That is not entry level. You need to have your own camera. You need to know how to photograph it, X, Y. And I'm like, those are not entry level. And I don't see anywhere where you're coming in as an assistant. I saw assistant photographer in a portrait studio and sales guy. So again, this is going to be, if you haven't put your dues into working at any of the mall photography places, that's the package. Here's the package, and you're going to walk somebody through and show them on the computer. Here's all of your poses. Here's ABC packages. Learn your upsales in there. Again, to me, that's great training if you're going to be a photographer, especially on your own, is learning to ask for those upsales and where you should inject those upsales. There's a lot of photographers, I don't think, that have the sales background in them. And in photography school, it's like arts classes. You don't get that business part of it. And I want to say that always kind of prepared me for selling art, and doing that was learning those,
salesmanship.
Here's where I'm supposed to inject an upsale, and here's where I'm supposed to, try to get a return back on here. So there's things like that. I think that those kind of jobs do help, but at what point do you say, okay, I can't work for this little. I can't work for $17 to $18 an hour.
Or I'm tired of working for someone else.
Exactly.
I know I can work for myself, but I just don't know how.
For the people who don't have that confidence, because this is sometimes, and I know it's trying to get mindset and stuff in somebody's head it's a very, vague thing to say, but can you give a little bit of a checklist that people are like, I've gotten a year of, posing people. I've gotten a year of, do you think a year on, what would you, if somebody not going the academic route like you did, what do you feel?
It's interesting because I want to answer that question in a general sense, but there's not a real general, a solid general way to answer that, because we need to have some kind of knowledge of what it is we need to do next. It's like driving. The question makes sense. What road should I be driving on? Mm-hmm. Well, unless I know what road, where someone is trying to go, I can describe good roads, mm-hmm. but just because they're good roads does not mean that they'll help you get to where you're trying to go. And so while there's a lot of good roads and there's a lot of bad roads I can tell you not to be on, mm-hmm. to tell someone what the good roads are, I don't think is actually very beneficial, mm-hmm. because the difference between good and bad is kind of obvious. Someone who's not a pro would be able to identify that. Mm-hmm. The difference between reaching your goals, your definition of success, is being able to define the difference between good and right, not mm-hmm. good and bad. And the only way to define the difference between good and right is to know what you're trying to head towards. And so to answer that, generally, I'm thinking that you put yourself in a position of being able to try out different things. Mm-hmm. So if jobs, I'd say take a step before that, and maybe you have to have the income so you don't have that opportunity. Yeah. But let's say that you have an opportunity to maybe on the side do some assisting work with different types of photographers, mm-hmm. Be in their presence and ask them questions and see what their clients are doing, and see what questions the clients are asking. So there's several of these different variables, but I'd say put yourself in those situations so that you can narrow down the things. At first it's the things you don't like that you're really narrowing down, and that's an important thing to do, is to narrow out what you don't enjoy, so that you can just continue to narrow that down to the things that you do enjoy.
Do most people, when they come to you and say, I want to start a photography business, or I want to become a professional photographer, do they know what they want to do?
Some do. They're pretty focused on it, but I would say that's not the norm. They're thinking that that it means anyone who wants, as far as clients, any client who wants to hire someone who is a button presser with a lens is the kind of work they're going after. And there's a few things they may not want to do, but for the most part, if someone is looking for X type of work, sports or headshots or weddings, I'm going to need to learn how to do it all. And I don't believe that.
So what would you say the steps are to narrow it down?
Put yourself in the position of those different environments.
So it's Nike.
Reach out to the wedding photographer that you think is doing a good job. Reach out to the headshot photographer. Reach out to the boudoir, the child photographer, the maternity photographer. Whatever things that you think you might have an interest in, reach out to them. Now, first, you're doing your due diligence. You're researching the different types of photography you might have an interest in, and you're going to those websites, and you're getting a feel for what's going on. So I say the initial stuff is done online on your own time. But then, of those who catch your interest, actually call them, actually reach out to them, and don't expect them to be overly excited, because they've got a million things already going on. They're wonderful, helpful creatives. Creatives are helpful people. They enjoy being around people. They like helping people. And so they are open to help you, but you may realize that, that first email you send out gets zero response. Don't let that slow you down even slightly. Just understand that they've got a million things just like you already going on in their lives. And so reach out again, reach out with a phone call, reach out in multiple different ways. I'd say a minimum of 5 to 7 times before you can actually judge whether that person is interested in helping you out.
I always find that in-person contact always elicits the best positive response.
You're not a priority via email.
Yeah.
Phone call, you were temporarily a priority.
And then in person, you become priority. What about going outside of what you like? How often do people say, okay, well, I want to become a photographer. I'm open to this, I'm open to that, but I really don't want to do this. But then they go try it and they discover they like it. Yeah, they like it. So does that mean it probably means it's a good idea to also try something out of your comfort zone?
It is a good idea to do that. And there's so many different things you can learn by doing that. Even if you have no intention of going that direction, at least you get to see things from different points of view. So if I'm working with someone who, one of the things I like to start with, even if they know, even if they have an idea of what they do, I'd like to start by describing them. There's a handful of things that they really enjoy doing, that they're passionate about, that they like, that they can get up for in the morning with plenty of energy. And so one of the steps I like to go through as far as a private session is to define who they are. Take away photography temporarily, especially if they don't know what they want to do. But take away photography temporarily and just define who they are on several different levels. There's 11 different levels that I go over, so I won't go over each one of them. But all these different things that are important to them in their life, make a list of the things, of these different categories, like family, relationships, career, how they want to live their life, just different things. Maybe they have
profile.
They create it themselves, but I help them do that. Because what that does is it says, this is who I am. It's a starting point. If we have a map, we have to know where we are today in order to get to where we're going tomorrow, or on that drive. We have to know where we are. And so if we just start off saying, oh, it doesn't matter where we are, let's not define where we are, you're still not going to be able to get to where you want to go. You've got to somehow narrow down the place where you are today and define who you are. And now someone who's in there, a lot of times the 20-somethings that do this say, I don't want to do that. There's too many things in life I haven't experienced. So to define what it is that I like would be impossible. And I understand their point of view when they are 20-somethings. I get that. But I'm telling you, you guys in your 20s, you're actually wrong about that. Because there are some things you believe in. There are some things that energize you. And if you can define what those are, you can get more of those things. It's kind of like if you buy a new car, all of a sudden there's more of those on the road than there ever were. And so put yourself in a position to see the things that excite you and get more of those things. And along the way, do things that are out of your comfort zone, out of your awareness, out of you're ignorant of some things. Put yourself in a position where you can reduce that ignorance.
And it also increases your confidence when you are approached with a situation that you otherwise might be uncomfortable with. Or, let's say you have a client that says, hey, can you do this? And say, well, I've never really done that before. But if you've thrown yourself in a situation where you've had to operate outside your comfort zone, you're going to be more confident in taking on that project in the first place. Yeah.
Have you had assistants in your portrait business, like that are helping
apprentices, interns?
Yeah, they're doing like lighting and reflectors and stuff for you if they're learning about lighting and stuff. which I think is really
For-
important.
For years, I had a program for interns, apprentices, and a shadow program. And shadow is really a no responsibility. It's just to show up and observe. But intern and apprentice positions are definitely responsibility type things. So real jobs. So an intern is more of a lighter weight, not as much, but an apprentice is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And neither one of those were paid positions. In the shadow program, they paid me to do. Now the shadow program was that wasn't anywhere near as popular as the intern program and the apprentice, which might be surprising to you because those were the more intense ones. But if someone wants to learn what effectively they're doing in spending time with me when I did those programs, because I don't do them anymore. But the intern program and apprentice program were very time consuming. And the apprentice program was a full time, 40 hours a week kind of full time thing. And so not everyone's in a position to be able to do an unpaid intern or apprentice position. But those that do are effectively getting an education for free. They're not paying anything for their education. And so to say that's for free is really a surface level view from someone who doesn't have any appreciation for what it is that you're doing. So if you're in an intern program or an apprentice program and it's an unpaid one, you're doing it because you see the value. And if you don't, then get out and do something else.
Yeah, it's for the learning. Now, a lot of I'm guessing that the intern is usually a lot of times these are photography students going through,
it can be
at a university.
It may be that they just have a full-time job already and they're considering a change or maybe a side gig. And so they're just curious. I wonder if I would like to do that. And so they have things that they're doing. So I would have them set up a special project. You may call it a mini session, but I like to call them special projects or giving them some kind of a specific name. I would give them an assignment of putting one of those together. Now I would help them do that. And we sometimes we just did the process of it and we didn't actually have intention of taking it to its end, but that wasn't the norm. Normally we absolutely had intention of actually creating this special project and being able to make it happen, put the effort into creating marketing materials, getting clients, photographing the clients, post-processing of those images and selling them those images.
What did an intern or an apprentice have to come with to show you, because
that's a good question.
What basic skills did you ask them?
I never required a portfolio.
Okay.
I always have cared more about that person's drive and what their feelings are and what they are, what their beliefs are. So I did an interview. So they didn't just get in. They had to go through an interview, but the interview was just a conversation, kind of like we're having here. It was just, banter back and forth. What are your interests? Why would you feel like this would be valuable for you? Because I don't want to assume. I assume why it would be valuable. I think I know why it would be valuable to do this, but I don't want to assume because I want to know what they're looking for. Kind of like if I'm working with someone and they've got a bunch of images on Pinterest that they've collected and they show me these images, I can assume what it is they like about those images. But I don't want to assume because the thing they like about a specific image might not have been the exact thing that I thought that they would have liked. They caught my attention. I'm looking at an image. I'm thinking, oh, the lighting is great on this. And I didn't even pay attention to the pose as much. Maybe it was the pose that got their attention and they can't stand the lighting. And so I don't want to assume anything. I want to ask. And so I'm going through this process of just visiting with the intern or apprentice prospect and finding out who they are, what their goals are, what they're thinking they might want to do, and discovering, am I the right tool to help them do that? And if I am the right tool to help them do that, and I like them, then they're in without having shown me anything, maybe not even having a camera themselves. So
does a photographer necessarily also have to be a photo editor? Is that just has to be hand in hand now? Is it like you're not a photographer if you're not a photo editor?
I think to start, it's almost impossible not to have to do both.
Well, it's a good question. There's a lot to learn in photography, and I understand that it's overwhelming. But it's not something that someone learns overnight. anyone. You're looking at some as that intern or apprentice or someone who with just an idea. You're looking at these people who have been doing this for a while and seem like they're really fantastic at it, and they probably are. And you may look at them like, I want to be that way. And at first, you don't know what you don't know, so you're just excited about moving that direction, which is great. It's really good that you don't know what you don't know, because you probably wouldn't do it because it does take a ton of work, but it is your passion. And if it keeps on coming back to you, that's just what you have to do. But doing it right is the way to go, because a photographer can be someone who struggles their entire career. So if I went back to the road example, there are people who drive on good roads all the time, and all their friends and family see them driving on good roads, so they think you're doing a good job. But you can spend your entire career just by driving on good roads and never reach any level of success. So therefore, you're struggling your entire career. So you need to actually focus in on what it is you enjoy, and make at some point. Now, I'm not saying today before you begin. I'm saying at some point relatively early on, you've got to define, if this is a map, what city you're driving to, or what destination of any sort that you're driving to, so that you can narrow down everything you're doing, because there's way too many good things to put in your path. You have to narrow down the good things, or you just simply will never reach even your whatever definition of success you have. Here's one thing that I think photographers say way too much when they're beginning. I'm not doing this to get rich. Nobody's doing it to get rich. Stop saying things that don't matter. It's like saying, I'm not trying to change the color of the sky. Okay, well, you can't do that anyway. So it doesn't matter. I'm trying to do this to get rich. I'm trying to do this to get poor. Stop it with all that stuff. Those are just words that cause you to give an excuse for not doing something. So sure, no one's trying to do this to get rich. They're doing it because it's their passion. But if they do it right, they can do quite well in photography.
Yeah, I've always thought that as well. That the phrase "I'm not doing this to get rich." It's like there are people that use that term. Not all cases, but in many cases, they're using it as a way out.
Yes.
If
An excuse to not do something,
feel like they fail or what have you, and so
Well, the response should be then, are you doing this to get poor?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to get
I think
poor. You want to
I
get.
think the question I would ask a person that would say that to me and says, "Well, are you doing this to better your life?"
Yeah.
yes,
Well, I mean,
and
look
you have to
out
say
this-
yes to that.
Yeah. So
It's
Sure.
I asked that question because I met a photographer who's in his 70s, so it's a different generation even than us. And he was telling me how he's on his second book, and he's going to be here for our April first Tuesday, and he's on his second book of his photography. And he was mentioning to me as we were talking is that he likes he used to like this one photo lab he would go to, just go drop things off, and the guy ended up learning what he liked and what his eye is, and would print what he needed. And I'm like, oh, so he was your photo editor? And he goes, yeah, because I don't like doing that part of it. I have all these things that I don't want to do anymore.
a lot of
And
photographers don't like doing
doing that part, yeah. And they're,
That's right.
or they like it at first, and then it feels tedious after a while.
It is.
but I used to have that different byline because I did college, newspaper, and then I did newspaper work too. And I would have that byline of either being the photographer or photographer and photo editor, where it was now when I look at these jobs that are, again, now supposed to be entry level photography, they want you to do both and it's very rare that I find a
Right.
photo editor unless it's photojournalism, that you find the photo editor who may not photograph anything for the publication. They are a photographer, but they don't photograph anything for that publication. They go through, well, the way we used to do it, you have your whole sheet here and you get your loop and you go through and you say, okay, we're going to circle these. These are the ones we're printing for print.
Loop.
So
You're dating yourself. with
I
words like
know. That's great being a
that. A
vampire.
20-something is not going to know what that
I know.
means.
Photo loop is.
So,
It's a
so,
magnifying glass.
but going back to the original question, it almost seems though to me that you're going to have to at some point learn how to, when you're starting.
Probably so.
Yeah.
For me, yes, absolutely. You can't hire people to do this. There are people who do that. There's organizations that do that. There's a company that I use on occasion where I don't have time or I don't want to, and it's very inexpensive to do, in my opinion. There are different levels of artists who do digital manipulation. So there's those organizations that can do it for pennies per image and then several dollars per image, and those who do it for $100, $200, $300 per image. So there's lots of different levels for different purposes. And if you are unfamiliar with this altogether, you may look at that and think, well, which one am I supposed to do? Back off of that. Until you know what your end result is, don't even bother trying to figure out what the right tool is.
Now, I will say this is in the early days of Finer Works, I offered to do scanning of people's photos. They could send old photos and or the pictures, and I would scan them, and then I would do clean it up, fix it up, do some photo restoration, and I didn't charge a lot of money, but I charged a fair price, and I thought, wow, this is cool. I mean, I get to just sit here. It's a lot easier than stretching canvas prints. So I wish I could just do this. Well, I did that for about a week, and I said, I hate this. I hate it. It only took a week of photo editing where I said, this is the most boring thing I do. So I would warn people, say, hey, that think, oh, that's a cool job, being a photo editor. I think most people probably feel like me, is that I hate this after a while. Especially if you want to be a photographer, but it does seem like something that you have to do, because you're going to have, at some point, you're going to have to crop your photos to fit, within the confines of a print that your client wants, or maybe, the lighting could just use a little extra, work, or if you're doing street photography, maybe you want to get that guy that's waving at the camera out of the background or something like that. So there's going to be always those issues that are going to rise up. So I think almost you have to spend some time, or you should learn a decent photo editing program like Photoshop.
Generally speaking, I would say absolutely you want to know that. Specifically speaking, if someone has a specific reason for doing something or not doing something, then that can easily be taken into consideration for their business model. And so let's say that they can't stand business side, they can't stand the post-production side. The only thing they really enjoy is being out and pressing that shutter button. Well, they can create a business model that's specifically for their processes, that gets the end result that they want while using other tools to get done the things that they don't want to do. And those are things that you wouldn't necessarily know at first, because you need to discover, do I like working with Photoshop?
Yeah.
You need to discover, all the different, do I like sales? Do I like the behind the scenes? Do I like setting my prices? What things do I like? Because at first I knew that the business side was important, but I didn't know to what extent. Because in my photography program at a university, which the photography side was fantastic, the business side was zero. It didn't even come up in conversation. It did come up in conversation, but the teachers wouldn't answer the question. They would defer the question, or like you'd say, well, what do I need to know to start a business? Well, you won't need that till after you graduate. They give answers like that, or it's not on the test, or that's the kind of answers they give. And they didn't give that because they didn't care about you or they didn't think it was important. They didn't know. In the academic world, at least for photography, and I'm sure in other businesses or other majors, they hire based on academic experience, not on practical. And so that makes it where you could actually have a teacher who's never been a photographer.
I think that's true. There are exceptions. Certain colleges, a lot of times community colleges are great.
They're better at it.
Yeah,
Yes.
because
Really
they will take
better.
they will they will look at people's also previous occupation, previous career, and factor that in, which is why I think community colleges are a great place to study photography, because you're more likely to have professors that have real world experience.
I know, just working on some of the news publications here, actually sometimes we didn't take any photographers unless they had been taught at one of the community colleges here, San Antonio College. they had such a good program. Those kids came out knowing everything. And again, this is back in where you still had to develop your own film, just on the cusp of when digital was coming out. So again, dating myself because I'm saying I used to work at a newspaper. People don't know. I don't know what a newspaper is anymore, but I used to work at one of the, and that was one of the experiences. And was a community colleges. You just had. I went to a private university, and I mean, no qualms to my photography teachers there, but I took classes over at San Antonio College because I had more practical thing, and they also had better resources in the community that I could go to. We used to have here in San Antonio, I don't know if we still do, a community darkroom. I know Austin has one left, the East Side Dark Room there, which is, if y'all go look them up, they need somebody to keep that going. But community dark rooms, and I didn't know where to find those as a student on my own. I want to say the community college professors or instructors were more mentor than I felt that the paid private college I went to, because it was somebody maybe who was in the journalism major who kind of knew how to do a camera and they could teach from the book.
Yeah. I'm guessing most of your university professors are going to be of that caliber. Not that they don't have a wealth of knowledge, but they're full-time professors. That's all they've been is full-time professors in most cases.
Yeah. It was like so that the university could offer the class. So
yeah.
But what about portfolios nowadays, Jim? Like back in the day, it was a physical block, portfolio with the handles that you went and you showed. Now, a lot of people look at, where do I go online to build a decent portfolio that will show that I can share? I know Adobe has its version of it, which I think is still just a website builder. Wix is also a website builder, but people say, where is there something that is like, again, because here's another aspect you don't want to do. Some people are like, I don't want to be a James. I don't want to be a web developer, and I don't want to design a website. Are there anything that people can go, I just want to upload my photo? Yeah. Very WYSIWYG.
Good question. And it still is defined on what you're trying to do as an end result. Because it's quite possible you have no need whatsoever for a portfolio, physical or otherwise. But that's a rare thing you actually usually do. So I may be in that rare category where I didn't need it, possibly because I had it at one point and got clients as a result, and those clients talk to each other. And so you get people who are calling saying,
the effectiveness of having a portfolio on your website,
it reduces over time because of your relationships that you build. And what I found is that people hire you, you as the individual. If you get yourself out into your target market's path, whatever that is, that could be going to business events like a Chamber of Commerce event. It could be going to a mom's group, but when you put yourself in the path of your ideal client, of course you have to identify what that is, because going back to identify the things you don't like, there's people who drain your energy. In other words, you may not, it may be not a matter of not liking them, but if they're draining your energy, they aren't ideal for your photography, your creative business. And so therefore identify who it is that brings you joy, who you get energized by spending time with. And that way those people become more obvious to you, and those who drain you just kind of fall off. But in a lot of different portrait photography type businesses, it's the personality that is number one, and photography that's number two. It's not a matter of they don't look at it, it's just they like you. And if your photographs are okay, because they're picky in some ways, they are not so picky in others, because they aren't pro photographers. They don't know the specific details to look for, and so they are hiring me, generally speaking, because for whatever reason they like me, either because they have a friend who likes me and so that is good enough for them, or they have some kind of direct relationship at some event, they've heard of me through some source, and so they aren't hiring me because of my work. They're hiring me because there's something about me that they connected with.
Now I will say this. Okay, so I strongly believe that it is important when you're starting out to have a website that shows samples of your work.
It is.
Okay.
And you really
and-
need that period,
Yeah.
no matter what, because even if they like me, it's not like they're not going to go check out the work.
But here's the
They
thing: even if you've been a photographer for how many decades?
First paid job was in 1983.
Yeah. But even if you've been around a while, it still can pay dividends. It can still help. Classic example. A few years back, a photographer we both know, Elizabeth Holmes.
Yes. Holman.
Okay. Yeah, Holman. Yeah.
Homan.
I always get her last name. Mistake her last name. But my wife wanted to do Santa Claus pictures, not that because usually we go to you, but I don't know.
She does it at a different level.
Yeah.
I'm doing the quick one, the 10-minute, and she's doing a full beautiful. I mean, she does amazing.
Yeah, I don't know where she saw her work, but she saw an example of her work somewhere. I think that maybe it was in the magazine ad or something like that.
Probably so.
And she said, "Wow, I want to have Santa Claus pictures made of children like that." And so she looked her up and we said, booked an appointment and told me, said, "Hey, yeah, I'm doing Santa Claus pictures." I says, "Oh, really? You talked to Jim?" And she said, "No, it was a photographer named Elizabeth Holman." And Holman. How do you pronounce it?
Homan.
Holman. That's what I said.
Noel.
Holman. Okay, why do I always put? I mean, so Elizabeth, if you see this, sorry about that. Anyway,
Everybody loves Elizabeth.
yeah. So anyway,
She's great.
I looked at the name and said, "I think it's familiar," because it just so happened she had spoken to the photo essay meetup maybe a few months prior, and I'd met her, and my wife said, "Yeah, I don't remember where she said she saw her work, but she then looked her up and said she was curious, and she looked at her website, and she was sold once she saw the photos on her website." So, and I don't know how many thousands of dollars we spent on portraits with her because she's up there in price. But anyway, point was, her website really sold it, and so even if you're not a photographer that's been doing it for a while and maybe your work you feel is mediocre, post it.
No matter what, I feel you do need a website.
Yeah.
And
you can always update it. You can
Well,
lose
you
do
some of your
constantly
photos,
update it.
and you, like I said, as you progress.
But you had
lose-
mentioned Wix as a good platform. Squarespace. I don't know if it doesn't have to be fancy, but
Does WordPress have, I guess, like a
WordPress?
plugin? Yeah, do they have their
I don't know. Probably
like a
WordPress.
photo plugin
Yeah,
kind of theme or
maybe,
something like that?
Maybe,
They've got
but I know it was popular maybe
Should ask Yusuf.
10 years or so ago. I'm not sure if they're still used much anymore. SmugMug and Zenfolio.
They are.
Are they still? Okay.
I wouldn't use that as people do use that as their website. I wouldn't use those as my website.
Okay. All right.
But those are also e-commerce sites. So
Okay.
Purchase.
Yeah.
There's another one called Pass, and it's a popular one. I don't like Pass, and I won't go over the
You used to
reasons
use
for
Photo
it.
Reflect quite a bit.
Photo Reflect, well, because they were one of the first e-commerce sites for for
And
photographers.
that was for people
And
actually
there's not a
purchase.
whole lot of people using that one
Oh,
anymore.
really?
So I think that Zenfolio and SmugMug are probably the
E-commerce platforms for photographers, but as far as portfolio, really, the Squarespace, the Wix, they have the built-in tools
Squarespace
already.
is probably my favorite of
Squarespace or
those.
Square?
Squarespace.
Squarespace. Okay, yeah. I like. I
And Wix is pretty easy,
Yeah.
but it has some people have a negative connotation to it because it wasn't quite as good as it is now. And so that reputation has stuck as a Wix site looks like a Wix site looks like a Wix site.
Yeah.
And it's not that way any longer.
Mhm.
They've progressed just like
Yeah.
everybody else has. And so they have a good product. But because they were the first or early on to do those
Yeah.
templated ones where you just have X number of
Yeah.
templates, and they were, you could customize them to some degree,
Yeah.
but they did kind of look like each other.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not really an issue.
I will say this because we have a lot of users that have us fulfill orders through Squarespace and through Shopify.
Yeah.
And I typically recommend Squarespace because they, unless you're comfortable with more complex interfaces, because I feel that the Squarespace interface is much easier to use, just much more user friendly. Doesn't have as many plugins and stuff that Shopify has, but it does seem to be more stable. Just my own personal opinion at the moment with the two platforms. But yeah, maybe not as many template options, but definitely easier for, I think, a photographer starting off to, get a website up. And
it seems like a lot of younger photographers nowadays for their portfolio also use Instagram.
Oh, very much so.
Because a lot of them, like, here's my Insta that's the first thing people ask, what's your Insta? And but it's how you format your photography in there, because it is that 1:1 aspect ratio. And do you crop your photo for that, or do you show full photo and leave black? There's that on there. I don't know if it gives the full intent, or if you have a 10 image carousel you can use on it. You can have one as a hook kind of picture to bring in if you want to do the full thing, or crop it down to a 1:1 aspect ratio that makes it interesting. But I find a lot more younger photographers are gravitating to Insta, which a little bit dangerous because you don't own your Instagram site. And we talk about this a lot, and
yes.
converting followers to email.
Yes.
But
your lead list is Instagram's lead list, not yours. So
Yes.
if you're dependent on Instagram, don't.
Yeah,
Because
I love social.
use it. Don't hesitate to use it,
Yes.
but don't become dependent upon it, because someday Instagram could be gone, or they could.
Or you get
drop
hacked, and
So,
there's somebody selling Ray-Ban glasses on your
Again, your Instagram followers are not your followers. They're owned by Instagram, as far as because they totally control that. They can choose whether or not to.
They also can determine if you're, like, say you do nude photography or figure photography. That can be deemed as something to censor, and
against community standards.
Yeah. So you can, again, you want to do that boudoir photography. I mean, I follow some, what's her name, off of American Pickers, Danielle. She's a burlesque dancer on the side too. So her Instagram is a lot of burlesque shots, and some of them are done by professional photographers. But because of the content, that's considered, too risque for Instagram, and it gets pulled down, or her site, there's a lot of things that can kind of, you got to remember, it's somebody else's business, and you have to go by their guidelines and their standards. And it's not yours.
We talked a lot about this last Tuesday. I guess it was,
so there's that. I mean, but like I said, again, it's something I see heavily with younger photographers that are getting into their business and trying to show other people their work. I still say have a social media platform. You kind of need to have it. It's a necessary evil, but you have to learn to utilize it well to, again, further your career rather than be your sole.
So safe to say it's a good idea for that. It's good. Kind of summarize it. Find what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
2,
Network with
learn photo editing,
mm-hmm.
because you're probably going to need it at some point. 3, develop a portfolio. Okay, an online portfolio per se. That's what we're referring to. Mm-hmm. And then what's next?
I would say networking with somebody. Go up to somebody and see if you can kind of find some way of mentoring.
Networking or interning or finding a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I would put those on. So networking for the purpose of finding someone to work with, an intern type thing, but also networking for the purpose of growing your database and your prospects.
Yeah.
client list.
That's what's great about photo essay groups like that you can kind of go there and network. You have that space. And like you said, sometimes it's a photographer who appreciates another photographer's work that's going to go ahead and sees the value of, like you were just mentioning, the Santa photos that you just had done for your kids. It's like, well, you know what? It's people in that community who are going to appreciate sometimes your work, and they'll go to you first. There's also specialties. You might have somebody who is, let's say, a landscape photographer, but they need headshots done, and they would rather go to somebody who does, yeah. So there's that. But I wanted to get some stuff for photo essay before we end everything, because you have some stuff coming up also with your photography.
Well, the photo essay it's on the second Thursday of each month, so we just had that. And as far as the my classes,
which one do you want to do? 101?
we have a Photoshop 101 that's coming up. And Photoshop 101 is this time going to be a 5-hour class via Zoom. And so that anyone anywhere could do this particular class. And we'll go over the major tools in Photoshop. Obviously in 5 hours. 5 hours may seem like a lot to you, but 5 hours of Photoshop is the basics. It's not the details. It's not meant to be. It's meant to give you a comfortable understanding of what the tools are, and the most popular tools, not every single one of them, because I don't even know how many there are. There's probably a million different tools on Photoshop.
And the tool, and there's so many tools there's so many things you can do with the program, and so many tools in there. But yeah, I think
and overlapping tools.
Learning the ones to really kind of, so you can comfortably use Photoshop for your photography business is definitely important. And I think the Photoshop 101 course will put you in that category where, yeah, I can actually use Photoshop now. It'll help.
I'm not scared of it.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to learn, and it doesn't take, it can still feel overwhelming because of all the different variables, but this will, at least if this was a toolbox, it's like taking out the hammer, saying, this is a hammer.
Yeah.
Here's what it does, and here's where you find it. Here's a screwdriver. Here's what it does, and here's where you find it.
And using that analogy is every carpenter has to learn how to use a hammer. I think every photographer needs to learn how to use Photoshop.
Yeah. I know Photoshop has, it's changed over the years. I was used to it when it used to be a CD. And I felt I had more ownership of the program, I want to say then. No. But then the subscription base came out, and there were so many things to learn on it. And I kind of did it like a gym membership, like I'm going to pay for this and eventually go to the gym and work out, which obviously I didn't do that well as either. But I find if I have something that I have to get done or do, that's when I find there. And I remember you used to be able to do this in Photoshop. I can't remember anymore. And I have to go Google how to do that again. But
now what about
it's a good
now
place to have.
Photoshop? We're talking about the actual Photoshop Creative Cloud, but there's also Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. Okay, now do you get into Photoshop Lightroom with this?
I have a Lightroom 101 also.
Okay. And just for
anyone else scheduling that pretty soon. It's not on the calendar.
Yeah, Lightroom is more for global edits, where you can do batch processing for large quantities of photos.
Organization.
Very, very great, good program. Interface very different. You do share some of the same tools. It works in conjunction with Photoshop, but Photoshop is more for editing individual photos, although there are some batch options in there, but it's ideal for editing, making
specific art.
Yeah,
is what I call it.
And again, when's the date on this?
So that one's coming up on the Friday, March 31st.
Okay.
And they can sign up where at
landersphotoschool.com.
And the link is there in the comments. If you're watching this on replay and everything, just kind of click on that. You also have another one, which is this creative
photography is our Photo 102 class. And so it is using the basics that if you already know the basics, and this is an appropriate next class, because it's a follow-up to our Photo 101 where we learn the basics of aperture and shutter speeds, ISO, focusing system, color balance, lenses, all that kind of good stuff. But those are based on that's kind of like the toolbox where you're going through saying this is a hammer, here's how you use it. But we're not using it a whole lot in Photo 101. We are using it, but it's more going over everything, and then I give you the homework assignment. Well, creative photography Photo 102 is not a whole lot of new information, but using the information that you learn. So if you feel like maybe I know the basics, f-stops and shutter speeds, ISO, focusing system, etc. I know these things, but I might like to be around someone who knows it, and we go do it. So this is a field trip style where we go to it's 4 2-hour sessions, and each time we go to some place and we walk around. It's a photo walk, and you photograph whatever it is that catches your attention, and I'm looking at your work, or you're sharing whatever you want to with me, and maybe making some suggestions on how else you might want to consider doing that kind of thing. So yeah, creative photography is coming up, and that's all. It's Tuesday evenings in April. Now this one is not online. This one's in person. So you need to be able to at least drive into San Antonio to be able to take advantage of this particular class. The Photoshop is done via Zoom, so you can be anywhere. But this one is in person, and we'll be going to different places to do this particular class.
That's good. Did you have anything else in closing that you wanted to add, Jim, or is there any photo essay news that you want to?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. The next speaker, I don't have a confirmation on yet, so I don't want to say.
Okay. Well, like I said, for our April 1st Tuesday, like I said, he's the photographer, Dr. Preston, who did he's documented public arts here in San Antonio for the last, I want to say since, I think the book covers up to about the 2000s, so the last 20 some odd years here in San Antonio, covering sculpture, mural. It's a lot. And his first book actually was architecture. He said there's not one living thing, one cat made it in there, and it's all architecture. But he's going to talk about going from making your photos here, taking your pictures, and then putting those together. The process of getting the publisher to getting a book, because he went through the process with a publisher rather than a vanity press where you put out your own book and stuff. So we'll have him here, and I think a lot of people who are in photography, it's going to be interesting to hear it from his aspect, and the artists, like I said, that are involved in all of the works that are in that book. It's a good way to go ahead and find somebody who's done this, and that's one thing you'll have to do if you want to make a book of your works, is that you'll need photos. You need a photographer, or you have to be photographing these. So it's just going to be the fact that learning is going to be an ongoing thing always, no matter what you are. If you're an artist, you're a photographer, it's an ongoing thing. I want to say almost every good profession is an ongoing learning experience, and that's what a lot of people have to do. So I thank you for being not only here and doing all of this, but being a mentor in the community, because there's a lot of people who say they got their starts going to photo essay meetings and having you help them and having them give them the direction on where to go. So thank you for that too. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and close next month. Actually, we're going to be talking about how to create your own photo community in your own community here. We're going to talk to
photo club, basically, yeah.
I'm waiting on confirmation for a second speaker here from another nearby city photo club, and we'll have you two talking about.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
I like him.
So yeah, it's.
I guess we shouldn't say his name yet, since
hasn't confirmed yet. I haven't confirmed yet, but
okay.
James knows a lot of. I guess you've been participant in or sponsor of many photo clubs here.
Yeah.
So,
I kind of. All the major ones we've sponsored at one point or another, or we do sponsor. Yeah. And so some we're sponsors, but they kind of forget we're sponsors sometimes, and but whenever they come to us and say, hey,
we need this,
is there something you can do to help us? And we're more than happy to do so.
Yeah, I think you'll learn how. I think that's where you get a little more with your photography, because you're so used to seeing it on a small screen, whether you're doing photography on your phone or just the little, screen that you have on your camera. But once you go into print and you make something huge, like a mural.
It doesn't even have to be huge. Just
I know, but just
printing a photo as an 8x10 will open your eyes and say, wow, I did not
right.
see that, or it was like, wow, it looks so much better. Because you're especially if you've trained your eyes to only look at your photos on a screen, because there's something different about holding a tangible item which represents your creation, which was a photo.
That's right.
And there's I almost want to say a bonding effect that you have with that photo at that
connection.
point. Yeah, an emotional
I
connection.
absolutely believe that.
And so if you are just looking at if you're taking photos and they never leave your screen, you don't know what you're missing.
That's right.
So in the comments below, put where your portfolio is, put the link down there, we'd like to see it. And then of course, if you're on Instagram, tag Finer Works when you make those prints, because we want to see those prints. I enjoy seeing them. They come on our unbox. I like to repost them.
Oh yeah.
Let us know, I mean, you have a audience of geeks here that will love to hear what kind of camera you use, your f-stop you on here, what paper you used, and to get your whole printed, shot. So let us know that on Instagram. We would love to hear from you guys. Thank you for joining, and we hope to see you guys next month. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.